Hey guys, tonight we're re-drifting into a time period so confusing, so itchy and so aggressively committed to looking ethereal, it makes modern beauty standards look like a self-care spa day. Yes, we were talking about medieval beauty, not the Disney princess version, not the elegant tapestry version. I mean the real deal, pale as a haunted candle, foreheads higher than your monthly electricity bill, and eyebrows so thin they basically filed a missing persons report. Before we wander too far into the land of plucked hairlines and questionable skincare rituals, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Seriously, no pressure. You can also comment where you're listening from and what time it is. Most of you seem to be tuned in at 1:48 a.m., wrestling with insomnia and the slow existential dread of tomorrow's alarm clock. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soothing medieval castle draft ambience, and get comfortable. Maybe tuck your feet in so no imaginary 14th century gremlin mistakes them for a midnight snack. Let S take a breath, because I have questions. Absurd questions. Necessary questions. Have you ever wondered what it took to look beautiful in medieval Europe? Why pale skin was so important you might willingly risk anemia? How far someone would go to achieve that perfect high forehead like, did they really pluck it into oblivion? Far? Did they have makeup or did they just smear random plants on their cheeks and hope not to die? And did medieval people ever moisturize, or did everyone simply wander around chapped, flaky, and spiritually defeated? What did shampoo smell like? Did nobles have a skincare routine? Could you survive one medieval beauty hack without crying, itching, or spontaneously combusting? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in the medieval era somewhere between the 5th and 15th centuries. Your forehead is suspiciously drafty. You smell vaguely of turnips, and beauty standards are about to hit you harder than a flying chamber pot. Good luck. In the medieval world, your face is your walking social status badge, and the paler it is, the more everyone assumes you've never worked a day in your life. So here you are, freshly awakened in the Middle Ages, blinking in the dusty light of a timber-framed room while a local woman looks you over like a cow she is debating whether to purchase. She squints at your face. You don't know what she's searching for, but she clearly doesn't find it, because she frowns and says you look healthy. In medieval beauty language, that is a devastating insult. It means you have colour in your cheeks. It means you probably work outside. It means you look like a person who lifts things. Horrifying. Within minutes, you are ushered toward a wooden table covered in creams, powders, and tiny pots that look suspiciously like someone raided a witch's pantry and then organised it by threat level. The woman explains that, to be beautiful, you must glow with the luminosity of someone who has never touched a turnip in their life. Pale is elite. Pale is dainty. Pale is I have servants handle all objects heavier than a feather. You look around and notice that nearly everyone of high social standing appears to be walking around with the complexion of a fresh parchment scroll. Meanwhile, you look like you've just returned from a moderately brisk walk in the sun, and frankly, that's unacceptable. So you sit down, preparing your face for a transformation, one that might, unfortunately, shorten your life expectancy by several decades. First, the base, the woman announces, presenting a powdery substance so white it makes flour look tan. You ask what S in it, and she responds with a cheerful list that includes vinegar, ground eggshells, crushed pearls, and lead. Just casual lead. Apparently, medieval beauty operates on the motto, if it doesn't burn, tingle, or slowly poison you, is it even doing anything? She pats the mixture onto your face with a soft cloth, giving you a blotchy, ghostly finish. You resemble a pale biscuit. She seems thrilled. Much better, she says, as if reviving your entire circulatory system was the problem. Out in the courtyard, you quickly notice that maintaining this heavenly pale look is a full-time job, mostly because the sun is the enemy. The sun is trying to ruin your entire aesthetic. You can just exist outdoors like a normal human. Oh no, you have to navigate the world like a vampire with anxiety, constantly avoiding direct sunlight. You duck under doorways, you hover in shadows, you linger beneath archways like you are haunting the place. And every time so much as a single ray touches your cheek, someone shrieks, "Your complexion! You'll darken." You're handed a hat with a brim so wide it could cast shade on an entire small village. It is heavy, it is stiff, makes you look like a medieval satellite dish, but at least it protects your face from UV rays that haven't even been discovered yet. Then there's the matter of bloodletting, a surprisingly common cosmetic trick. When you ask for clarification, someone casually explains that it reduces ruddiness. You know what else reduces ruddiness? Not being alive. But medieval people remain unfazed. If your cheeks are too pink, they suggest draining a little blood, like it's a totally normal afternoon activity. Not too much, they add, as if that's the issue you're concerned about. Even your diet is monitored. Noblewomen avoid hearty outdoor labour foods and instead favour small, delicate dishes that won't warm the complexion or encourage robust health. You're advised to eat things that are pale, gentle, soothing, and vaguely depressing, like porridge, they say, or boiled pears. Your modern stomach quietly protests. But despite the danger, discomfort, and questionable ingredients, you have to admit the pale aesthetic is working. People look at you differently now. They nod approvingly. They assume you live a life of ease, luxury, and minimal physical exertion. They think you are soft, refined, elegant. You feel like a fainting couch come to life. And as evening falls and you catch your reflection in a polished bowl, you realize something surprising. You don't just look pale. You look important. Confused but important, which is honestly the truest medieval beauty standard of all. You quickly discover that the ideal medieval forehead was so tall it practically had its own zip code. This revelation hits you early in the morning, when a group of noblewomen gather around you like you're a curious woodland creature they've just decided to groom. They stare directly at your hairline, your perfectly normal modern hairline, and react with the same horror you might reserve for discovering an expired yogurt in the fridge. One of them gasps, another whispers, "Tragic." A third gently asks whether your mother was sure she carried you to term. Before you can ask what exactly is wrong with your forehead, they start explaining. Back in the medieval era, beauty is all about looking refined, pious, and vaguely like a celestial being who's never experienced a single intrusive thought. And nothing, absolutely nothing, screams angelic elegance like a forehead so big it threatens to take over your entire personality. Within minutes, you are seated on a wooden stool, while two women hover around you with the solemn focus of surgeons. One holds a small, bone-handled pair of tweezers. The other holds a candle for better visibility, which is concerning because fire and hair normally do not mix. But here, it's apparently part of the beauty routine. You brace yourself. They explain the goal. Pluck your hairline back until your forehead looks graciously elevated. Elevated to where? Heaven, ideally. Every inch higher, they say, reflects intelligence, virtue, and an inner spiritual radiance. You're not sure if plucking your scalp can increase holiness, but nobody here is asking your opinion. The first tug surprises you. The second tug hurts. The third tug makes you question every decision that led you to time travel without pain medication. You start to imagine explaining this to a modern dermatologist. Yes, hello, I'm trying to recreate a 14th century look. What's the medical term for self-inflicted scalp recession? To make things more unsettling, the noblewomen don't stop at thinning out your hairline. No, they go further. They start plucking the tiny baby hairs along your temples, smoothing the area upward until you feel like you are being prepped for yes aerodynamic testing. In the medieval mind, these soft wisps are unsightly reminders of humanity, which is a dramatic way to say slightly annoying. Once they are satisfied with the height of your forehead, now roughly the length of a standard smartphone, they shift to styling. A high forehead shouldn't just exist. It must be framed with intention. They drape your hair behind delicate veils, braid the sides tightly, and adjust the angles to maximize your new architectural feature. It's like they're staging a photo shoot for your skull. And the compliments start rolling in. "My, you look so refined. Such a noble brow. She seems wise," someone whispers, as if they've just witnessed your brain grow 2 extra IQ points. You suddenly understand. In this era, your forehead is your entire resume. When you walk into the Great Hall later that afternoon, the difference is immediate. People nod at you with new respect. A few young nobles glance at your forehead with the kind of admiration modern people reserve for luxury cars. Even the servants seem impressed, or maybe confused. It is hard to tell. Of course, maintaining this look comes with consequences. Your scalp feels like it's filed a complaint against you. Your hairline itches all day, reminding you that beauty is suffering and suffering is apparently fashionable. And every time you catch a glimpse of your reflection in polished metal, you startle yourself. Who is that scholarly alien, you wonder? Oh right, it's you. But there's no denying it, the medieval obsession with giant foreheads has its own bizarre charm. For a brief moment, you understand why people did this. Why they endured plucking, pain, and prayer for the perfect holy brow. It is the same instinct modern people have for contouring, Botox, or spending $75 on a moisturizer that smells like citrus and broken promises. And as you settle into bed that night, scalp tingling, forehead glowing like a beacon of divine ambition, you realize something important. You may not feel holier, but you definitely feel higher. As you look around, you notice medieval women sporting eyebrows thinner than a medieval monk's patience. And not just thin, delicate, wispy, faint little suggestions of eyebrows, as if someone took a normal brow, set it to 10 opacity and called it a day. You, with your modern, healthy, expressive eyebrows, are basically walking around with 2 woolly mammoths on your face. People stare, children point, a noblewoman clutches her pearls and whispers, "Such boldness." You quickly learn that in medieval beauty, subtlety is everything, especially when it comes to the forehead region you just had forcibly expanded. Thick eyebrows? Absolutely barbaric. Bold brows? Downright rebellious. Anything remotely expressive? Suspicious. Possibly sinful. To be beautiful, you must maintain a calm, serene facial expression at all times, and eyebrows are simply too emotionally loud. They must be tamed, reduced, softened into oblivion, which is how you end up sitting at a wooden vanity, while 2 ladies arm themselves with tweezers that look more suited for removing splinters from knights than shaping brows. One tilts your chin very gently, the way a sculptor adjusts a statue. The other murmurs something like, "The brow must whisper, not shout. You don't want your brow to shout. You also don't want it murdered." But the medieval beauty train is already in motion, and you're strapped to the front of it. The first pluck is sharp, the second is emotional, the third is spiritually disorienting. Soon neat piles of your modern, expressive eyebrow hairs gather on the table like fallen soldiers of fashion. You begin wondering if medieval eyebrow shaping counts as a form of penance. Once they've plucked your brows into thin, barely there arches, the women step back, sighing in admiration. To be clear, your new eyebrows look like the faint outline of an idea, like your face is in beta testing. But here, you are radiant. A noble woman leans in and whispers, "Stunning." Another nods, adding, "A brow so gentle, surely she is blessed." You resist the urge to raise an eyebrow in confusion, mostly because you can't see anymore. Later that day, you attend a small gathering in the manor hall, where everyone's eyebrows look like they've been drawn with a pencil made of restraint. When you make eye contact with someone across the room, It's like trying to read an ancient manuscript. There is emotion there, but it is very faint and possibly written in a dead language. You learn that medieval women sometimes took the eyebrow thinning even further by bleaching them with lye or vinegar mixtures, substances that have no business being near human skin. One lady tells you proudly that she once achieved an eyebrow so pale, her husband forgot she had them. You can tell if this is meant to be romantic or concerning. To enhance the delicate look, some women even used grey or light-coloured powders to soften their brows further. You try this. It works. Your eyebrows disappear so completely you begin to fear you've entered a witness protection program for facial features. Out in the courtyard, you catch a glimpse of yourself reflected in a bucket of water. Your face looks strangely peaceful, almost too peaceful, like you've never felt strong emotions in your entire life. It's the look of a person who's never yelled at a printer, sat in rush hour traffic, or tried to assemble IKEA furniture without instructions. Still, the new brows make you blend into medieval society with surprising ease. Servants bow politely. Nobles nod approvingly. Nobody accuses you of being a witch or an outsider. That alone feels like a win. But eyebrow minimalism has its drawbacks. For one, your face now lives in a permanent state of serene confusion. You can express surprise. You can express skepticism. At best, you can squint thoughtfully, which makes everyone assume you're contemplating something holy. And yet somehow it works. The minimalist brows give your newly enlarged forehead room to shine. They soften your features. They whisper elegance, delicacy, and a certain otherworldly fragility that medieval society finds utterly enchanting. You may not feel more beautiful, but you definitely feel more aerodynamic. You're introduced to skincare routines that involve mixtures of vinegar, rosewater, and ingredients that probably violated several safety regulations before safety regulations existed. Your first encounter with medieval skincare happens when a noblewoman gestures you over with the enthusiasm of someone about to reveal a life-changing secret. You assume she is going to hand you a moisturizing cream or a soothing balm. Instead, she presents a bowl filled with a liquid that smells like a salad dressing and a dare. For the complexion, she says, beaming proudly. You lean in, sniff, and immediately regret using your nose. It turns out skincare in the Middle Ages relies heavily on three things: whatever grows in the garden, whatever can be boiled in a pot, and sheer, boundless optimism. There are no dermatologists, no ingredient labels, no allergy warnings. There isn't even a concept of maybe Dante put this on your face. If it smells vaguely earthy and hasn't he actively killed anyone this week, it's skincare. The first step of the routine is cleansing, which is generous wording for splashing your face with water that is definitely not filtered. But they've thoughtfully added rosewater, lavender, or sometimes ale to freshen the skin. You're not sure how fresh ale is supposed to make you feel, but you go along with it. Then comes exfoliation. They hand you a coarse cloth and explain that rubbing your face vigorously will invigorate the blood, which sounds like medieval code for irritate your entire epidermis. They demonstrate with a level of force normally reserved for scrubbing rust off armor. When you try the same motion on your cheek, your skin heats up instantly, like your face just remembered a deeply embarrassing moment from middle school. Next is the mask, a mixture that changes daily, depending on the season and what random ingredients someone has foraged. Today, S-mask features vinegar, crushed rosemary, and finely ground almond meal. You ask what it's supposed to do. A lady shrugs and says, "Make the skin glow, or at least tingle." Tingle is an understatement. The moment it touches your face, it feels like you're being haunted. Not aggressively haunted, but just a soft, persistent ghost tapping on your cheek. Some masks are worse. One contains ground-up snails. Another uses clay dug from the riverbanks, which they assure you is full of minerals and blessings. And then there is the infamous sulfur-based mixture, supposedly excellent for clearing blemishes, but also excellent at making you smell like a dragon who eats rotten eggs for breakfast. Moisturizer is another adventure entirely. There is no store-bought cream, no soothing aloe gel, no hyaluronic acid. Instead, they use a blend of olive oil, animal fat or beeswax, sometimes all three mixed together, if they are feeling ambitious. When they apply it to your skin, you don't exactly feel moisturized. You feel basted, glossy, as though you are preparing to be slowly roasted over a medieval hearth. Your face is shiny now, so shiny you could probably catch your reflection if you stood near a candle. But everyone around you nods approvingly. Radiant, one woman says. Healthy, another adds. These compliments do not comfort you. Mostly because you cannot move your forehead without hearing your new beeswax face crack slightly. While you are recovering, one noblewoman proudly mentions that some people use mercury-based ointments to fade scars and brighten the complexion. You politely decline because you prefer your skin without internal poisoning. And yet, despite the questionable ingredients, the inconsistent textures, the occasional burning sensation, and the general sense that someone is conducting skincare experiments on you, there is something oddly soothing about it. The scents of herbs linger in the air. The warmth of the communal room makes you drowsy. People chat softly as they stir bowls of botanical chaos. The entire experience feels like a medieval spa if the spa had zero regulations and a high probability of rash. By the end of it, your face is smooth, flushed, and smelling faintly of vinegar and courage. You don't know if you look more beautiful, but you do look like someone who is committed to the bit. And that S half of medieval beauty, not results, just devotion, herbs, and deeply misguided confidence. A lady casually hands you a pot of white face paint. It smells wrong. It feels wrong. She holds it out with the same gentle reverence someone in your century might use when presenting a luxury skincare item, except this one looks like it crawled out of an alchemist's failed experiment. The moment you pop the lid, a sharp metallic scent wafts upward, and every modern cell in your body screams, "No!" Unfortunately, your new medieval companions don't hear your internal panic. They just beam proudly, urging you to apply the paste to your face like it is liquid gold instead of powdered regret mixed with lead. You stare into the pot. The texture is thick, chalky, and slightly gritty, like someone crushed a handful of rocks and stirred them into cold cream. The noblewoman assures you that this paint is essential for achieving the most beautiful look, a complexion so pale it practically reflects sunlight. You already have 6 layers of pale-enhancing concoctions on your face, but apparently that isn't enough. Medieval beauty, you are learning, is a team effort between vanity and dangerous chemicals. She dips a small cloth into the pot and pats it onto your cheek before you can protest. It is cold, then warm, then cold again, and now your skin tingles in a way that suggests your pores are filing complaints to HR. "Lovely," she says, stepping back as if admiring a masterpiece. "Volatile," your modern brain whispers. As she continues painting your face with deadly enthusiasm, you try to remember the exact number of science classes you took that mentioned lead poisoning. It is a lot. You vividly recall the Don T ingest, Don T inhale, Don T's touch warnings. Meanwhile, this lady is applying it to your skin like she's frosting a cake. But in the medieval world, lead-based makeup, also called ceruse, is practically the gold standard for beauty. It smooths the complexion. It hides flaws. It gives the wearer that pure, ethereal glow that everyone associates with noble status. Nobody knows about toxicity yet. They just know it works. And sure, it slowly damages your health over time, but that happens so gradually no one connects the dots. Suddenly she's rubbing a second layer across your forehead, your temples, even the newly plucked planes of your enormous medieval brow. Your skin feels like it's trying to detach and walk home without you. Once the white base is on, they set to work blending it in with powders made from rice flour or ground bone. This part feels like being lightly dusted with the remnants of an old cathedral. They assure you this extra step mattifies the look, a term that means absolutely nothing to them but feels eerily modern to you. Then comes the contouring medieval style. Instead of bronzer, they use crushed cochineal insects or red ochre for shading. The pigments are applied lightly so your face doesn't look flushed, which would suggest the unthinkable, that you exerted physical effort. God forbid anyone suspects you lifted a bucket. A woman nearby dips a tiny stick into a pot of something dark. This is for defining the eyes, she says cheerfully. You lean in and realize it is a mixture of soot and oil. Medieval eyeliner. She applies it delicately to your lashes, giving you an expression that hovers somewhere between mysterious and slightly irritated by the smell of burning. By the time they finish, your face is a smooth, ghostly canvas dusted in white, framed by ultra-thin eyebrows and a towering forehead of holy proportions. You look expensive, fragile, slightly radioactive. The noblewomen squeal in delight. Magnificent, angelic. She looks positively shimmering. Yes, because you are shimmering, because your skin is covered in metal. But the wildest part, everyone around you genuinely believes this makeup is good for you. They claim it protects the skin, brightens the spirit, and keeps you looking youthful. Meanwhile, you are calculating how much of your modern lifespan you're sacrificing every time the lead sinks deeper into your pores. Still, as you move through the castle hallways, people admire you. You receive approving nods, soft smiles, even a few respectful bows. You look like someone who never goes outside, never works, and never worries someone whose beauty radiates from layers of effort, status, and mild danger. And in the end, that medieval makeup in a nutshell, a little elegance, a little illusion, and a whole lot of this is going to be a problem in about 20 years. For now, though, you glow literally. To achieve the ideal rosy glow, you're offered crushed berries, wine sediment, or a suspicious red paste whose ingredients nobody can or should explain. The medieval ladies present these options to you the way a sommelier presents fine wines, with flourish, pride, and zero concern for whether the product will permanently stain your skin or summon a small demon. One of them waves a bowl of crushed raspberries under your nose. Another holds out a clump of dried red powder that looks like something scraped off a cathedral wall. And then there's the paste, a deep, murky red substance sealed in a tiny pot, radiating an energy that says, I have been fermenting too long. You don't want the paste. You deeply, profoundly don't want the paste. Naturally, they encourage you to try the paste. Gives the best glow, they say. Lasts all day, they insist. May God protect you, whispers someone in the back. The first thing you learn is that rosy cheeks in the Middle Ages weren't just about beauty. They were about signaling life, vitality, and the suggestion that you hadn't been slowly suffocating under layers of lead makeup. Rouge was the finishing touch, the medieval version of just a little colour so I don't look like I am haunting the place. Your face, freshly painted pale as a ghost with the lead-based concoction from earlier, now needs warmth, but not too much warmth. Just enough to make it seem like you might have a pulse, but not enough to imply you've ever done physical labour. They begin with beet juice, harmless enough. One woman dips her finger and dabs it gently onto your cheekbones. The colour is surprisingly bright enough that you start to resemble a medieval doll. But the noblewomen shake their heads. Too fresh, they say, like disappointed judges on a cooking show. Next, they try wine sediment darker, duller, and giving you the slight appearance of someone who has recently face-planted into a vineyard. Again, not ideal. Finally, they return to the suspicious paste. They open the lid. The scent hits you first, earthy, metallic, and faintly reminiscent of potions from your please don to drink this childhood science kits. You ask what it's made from. Nobody knows. Or rather, nobody wants to say. You catch words like cochineal, vermilion, dried roots, and alchemy probably, but nothing definitive. They apply it with a soft cloth, dabbing your cheeks gently, then not so gently, then aggressively, as if trying to buff your soul into a rosier disposition. It tingles, it warms, it spreads, and suddenly your cheeks bloom with a deep red flush of a person who has either fallen in love or run up a flight of stairs, neither of which a medieval noblewoman would admit to doing. You examine yourself in a polished metal dish. The effect is dramatic. The pale lead face makes the red stand out in a way that is simultaneously beautiful and alarming. You look like someone who woke up in a cold castle and remembered taxes exist. But your medieval companions love it. Perfect, one sighs. So healthy. Another beams, as if the lead hasn't already undone whatever health this paste is trying to suggest. As you walk through the halls, you realise the function of rouge extends beyond aesthetics. It broadcasts personality. A little rouge says you're refined. A lot of rouge says you're bold. Too much rouge says you're either extremely fashionable or flirting dangerously with accusations of immorality. You suspect you're somewhere in between. Later, at dinner, you watch how everyone else uses rouge. Some women apply only a hint, barely a whisper of pink. Others go full Renaissance portrait, their cheeks glowing like embers. You notice a young noblewoman discreetly reapplying her rouge by rubbing a small cloth soaked in wine against her cheeks. She winks. Multi-purpose, she whispers. Rouge, it turns out, is one of the few medieval beauty practices that feels genuinely human. It's not dangerous. Unless the paste contains mercury, best not to think about that. It is colourful, it is expressive, and it is one of the rare moments when beauty isn't about shrinking, hiding, or suffering. It is about adding something, making yourself feel alive in a world where survival often dulls the senses. By the end of the night, your cheeks have faded only a little, leaving behind a soft flush. You look almost dare you say it healthy. The noblewomen are thrilled. You're still worried about the paste. But as you settle into bed, cheeks still faintly warm, you realise something. This is the first medieval beauty ritual that didn't make you fear for your long-term health. Mostly. You finally get to wash your hair with a concoction of rosemary, lavender, and whatever leaves happen to fall into the bucket. At first, you're excited. After everything you've endured, lead on your cheeks, vinegar on your pores, and a forehead plucked into the stratosphere, you cling to the hope that hair care might actually be relaxing. You picture warm water, soft lather, maybe even a medieval scalp massage if God is feeling generous. Then you see the bucket. It is murky. Suspiciously murky. The herbs floating on top look like someone swept the garden floor and thought, yes, this belongs on a human head. Rosemary, lavender, mint, a couple of unidentifiable green strands, and concerningly one whole leaf that looks like it came off the wrong plant entirely. The water itself is lukewarm at best, cold at worst, and carries the vague aroma of natural but in a way that might attract bugs. The noblewoman overseeing your transformation beams proudly. A perfect cleansing rinse, she says. You stare at the bucket, thinking the water might actually be cleaner if the bucket were empty. But here in the Middle Ages, hair washing is more ceremony than hygiene. Shampoo won to exist for centuries. Soap is rare, expensive, and often too harsh for hair. So medieval people rely on herbal infusions and good intentions, and prayer, lots of prayer. When they pour the rinse over your head, your first thought is, oh, that's cold. Your second thought is, oh, that's colder. And your third thought, once the rosemary needles hit your scalp, is, ah, so this is exfoliation via foliage. To be fair, the herbs smell nice. The lavender adds a floral softness to the air. The rosemary feels invigorating. The mint stings, but in a your scalp is awake now sort of way. It's almost like using an expensive boutique shampoo if that shampoo was made in someone's backyard with zero testing and a prayer circle. As they massage the mixture into your hair, you realise this is the closest thing medieval people have to self-care. It is soothing, methodical, and strangely communal. Noblewomen chat about court gossip. Servants hum little songs. Someone asks if your scalp tingles. It does. It definitely does. Then comes the brushing. Modern brushes are gentle. They glide. They prevent breakage. They work with your hair, not against it. Medieval brushes? They're made of wood, boar bristles, and the assumption that pain builds character. The first stroke feels like you are being groomed by an enthusiastic raccoon. The second feels like the brush is trying to steal your soul. By the third, you've ascended spiritually. Your life flashes before your eyes. A noblewoman assures you the brushing stimulates circulation, which is medieval code for sorry about the damage. But the shine it produces, shockingly not bad. Once the herbs settle, and your hair dries slowly because dryers aren't invented yet, and castles are basically giant stone refrigerators, your hair develops a soft sheen. A light floral fragrance clings to it. The strands look surprisingly smooth, considering they were just assaulted with woodland debris. Then comes the styling. Medieval hairstyles are architectural achievements. Coils, loops, braids, ribbons. Your hair becomes a structural project requiring engineering, patience, and several hairpins that feel like they could double as weapons. Your freshly washed hair is woven, twisted, and secured into a shape that would absolutely fail OSHA regulations, but somehow looks elegant. The final touch? A veil, a ribbon, or a little circlet that pushes your hair back to reveal your newly exaggerated forehead. The effect is ethereal. You look like someone who has never lifted anything heavier than a goblet. You try shaking your head. Nothing moves. The hairstyle is locked in. You could run through a windstorm and look exactly the same. Not a single strand dares rebel. Throughout the day, your hair remains stiff, fragrant, and slightly crunchy, a medieval mousse effect courtesy of herbal residue. Everyone is impressed. Several noblewomen ask what region you come from, as if your scalp contains cultural secrets. By evening, the herb mixture is dried fully, giving your hair a firm, almost textured feeling. You smell faintly like a forest, but in a good way. People comment that your hair looks glossy, healthy, and dignified. They assume you've undergone an hours-long beauty ritual, not the chaotic leaf rinse session it actually was. And as you drift off to sleep with your elaborate hairstyle collapsing slowly under the weight of gravity, you realise something. Medieval hair care may be unpredictable, questionable, and occasionally painful, but at least this time you didn't get poisoned. Someone suggests brightening your hair with a mix of saffron, chamomile, and sitting in the sun. At first, you think they're joking. Surely no one in their right mind believes that becoming blonder is as simple as brewing tea on your scalp and sunbathing like a medieval rotisserie chicken. But the noble women around you nod earnestly, as if they've just proposed a scientifically airtight method, approved by 12 physicians and at least one major saint. Here in the medieval world, blonde hair isn't just pretty, it is practically a spiritual achievement. Fair hair symbolizes purity, youth, and the kind of holy glow that suggests you've never uttered a swear word or tripped over a farm animal. If your hair is not blonde, well, it should be, at least according to everyone within whispering distance. Before you know it, someone has prepared a bowl of golden liquid so vibrant it looks like a sunset dissolved into a potion. It is warm, fragrant, and suspiciously yellow. Chamomile for softness, saffron for colour, and just a hint of something else, maybe honey, maybe pollen, maybe ground hope. No one can say. They dip a wooden comb into the mixture and begin dragging it through your hair with slow, deliberate strokes. The scent is soothing, floral, and warm. You momentarily forget that colouring your hair with medieval methods is essentially rolling emotional dice with Mother Nature. Still, you appreciate that for once the beauty ritual doesn't involve pain, or fire, or the risk of permanent nerve damage. But then comes the second part of the process. You must go outside. Not just outside into the sunlight, that natural enemy of your hard-won pale complexion. You have spent days avoiding the sun like it is trying to collect a debt from you. And now these women are handing you a chair and pointing you toward a sunny courtyard like you're being offered to the gods. The sun brings out the light, they say. The sun reveals true beauty, they add. The sun might undo all your previous beauty efforts, your anxious brain whispers. Still, they insist, and soon you're seated in the courtyard, hair glistening with saffron tea, a thin muslin veil draped over the back of your head to help set the colour. The sun is warm. The breeze is gentle. Birds chirp overhead. It's almost peaceful until you remember your skin is supposed to avoid the sun at all costs, because tanning would ruin the pale complexion you had just sacrificed 3 rashes and your dignity to achieve. They give you a wide-brimmed hat to shade your face, a hooded cloak for your shoulders, and a stern warning not to move your head too much. You look like a medieval scarecrow trying to get highlights. Time passes slowly in the courtyard. Heat builds, saffron drips. The herbal mixture begins to dry, leaving your hair stiff and sweet-smelling. You hear footsteps, someone checking your progress. They lift a lock of your hair, squint, nod, and announce, "It is working." You have no idea if they were right. You suspect. No one truly knows if it is working. But medieval confidence is a powerful thing. Eventually they declare that you've baked long enough and usher you back inside. Your hair is rinsed gently, thankfully, with the herb bucket and not, say, wine, and then brushed out. The noblewomen gather around you in a semicircle, breath held, eyes wide, as though you're about to reveal a sacred relic. Someone gasps. Someone whispers, "Glorious." Someone else bursts into happy applause. To be fair, your hair does look different. Not necessarily blonder in a salon sense, but warmer, slightly brighter, touched by sunlight and saffron in a way that gives it a golden sheen. It's a subtle change, a soft transformation. Your hair looks less like modern you and more like person in a medieval painting who definitely knows how to pray beautifully. Throughout the day, people notice. A maid compliments the colour. A nobleman glances twice. A lady whispers that you must be blessed by St. Agnes herself. The attention is flattering, even if you suspect most of the colour enhancement could be attributed to optimistic lighting, and everyone desperately wanting to believe the saffron worked. But the truth is, medieval hair lightening does have some basis in reality. Herbs like chamomile and saffron can brighten hair. Honey can lighten with repeated use. The sun, of course, does its sun thing. It's a primitive method, but not entirely ridiculous. The ridiculous part is sitting in full medieval regalia, sweating softly under a giant hat while your head marinates in floral tea. But as evening falls and your hair catches the firelight with a warm shimmer, you realize something important. For once, a medieval beauty ritual worked without poisoning you, burning you, or plucking something that was happily attached. A small miracle, or maybe just really good lighting. You attempt to clean your teeth with a gritty paste made of charcoal, salt, and crushed herbs. It begins innocently enough. You mention, casually, foolishly, that your teeth feel a little grimy. A maid overhears this and reacts with the enthusiasm of someone who's been waiting her whole life to demonstrate a medieval dental routine. Before you can backpedal, she drags you to a corner of the chamber where a wooden box holds an assortment of powders, twigs, and items that look suspiciously like they were harvested under duress. "Here we are," she says proudly, presenting a small wooden bowl. Inside is a dark, grainy paste that smells like the aftermath of a campfire mixed with a herb garden. You recognize charcoal. You recognize salt. The other ingredients? Those are classified under Don't Ask. She hands you a rag-wrapped twig, which apparently substitutes for a toothbrush. It is stiff. It is scratchy. It looks like something you'd use to start a small fire, not maintain dental hygiene. But everyone around you is watching with such expectation that you decide to give it a chance. You dip the twig into the gritty mixture. It clings to the surface like damp gravel. The texture is disconcerting. You bring it to your mouth. You regret everything. The first scrub against your front teeth feels like you're exfoliating enamel off your soul. The salt scrapes. The charcoal grinds. The herbs meant to freshen your breath taste less like minty revival and more like chewing on a medieval hedge. You keep going, mostly because stopping would result in an audience of judgmental stares and someone offering leeches as an alternative. As you continue scrubbing, the maid nods approvingly. Strong teeth make a strong heart, she says, which is absolutely not true, but you're in no position to correct medieval science. Another woman chimes in that charcoal removes the evil humours. Evil humours apparently are the medieval explanation for plaque. When you spit into a bowl because plumbing doesn't exist, it looks like you have been gnawing on a lump of coal. You rinse your mouth with water that is, let us say, rustic, and your teeth feel clean. Maybe, or maybe just traumatized. But the medieval dental journey isn't done. Oh no. Next comes the breath-freshening ritual, which involves chewing parsley, mint, fennel, or, in one unfortunate case, cloves that were definitely stronger than advertised. You pop a few leaves into your mouth and begin chewing cautiously. It's not terrible. It's actually better than the charcoal. The herbs brighten your breath and mask the scent of whatever medieval stew you were forced to eat earlier. Feeling proud of yourself, you stand to leave, but then a noblewoman steps in front of you holding a small vial. A finishing wash, she says. The liquid inside is pale yellow. It strengthens the gums. You ask what S in it. She beams. Wine. You sigh with relief. And vinegar. Less relief. And urine. You stare at her. She stares back, completely serious. You decline. Strongly. Thankfully, the noblewoman accepts your refusal without offence. Some prefer simplicity, she says graciously, as though you've merely refused extra sugar in your tea, not a mouthful of fermented body fluids. You think you're free. But then they advise you on daily tooth care maintenance. Don't eat too many hot foods, they heat the blood. Don't eat too many cold foods, they cool the blood. Don't chew with your front teeth, it is unladylike. Don't chew with your back teeth, they might crack. Don't chew too fast, you'll grow dim-witted. Don't chew too slow, you'll grow melancholy. Basically, don't chew. As the day goes on, you notice that medieval people have surprisingly decent teeth, mostly because sugar is rare and expensive. Unfortunately, this means that when someone does have a dental problem, the solution typically involves pliers, alcohol, and prayer. No anesthetic, no numbing, just vibes. You spend the afternoon hyper-aware of your teeth, suddenly cherishing your modern dentist with a love you didn't know you were capable of. By evening, your mouth has fully recovered from its encounter. With the charcoal salt scrub, your teeth feel smooth, your breath smells herbal, and you've learned a valuable lesson about medieval self-care. Sometimes cleanliness is achieved not through science, but through courage, sheer determination, and ingredients that could double as gravel for a small road. But hey, your smile is noticeably brighter. Or maybe that S just fear shining through. Perfume back then. A sachet of dried flowers stuffed into your clothes like medieval potpourri, desperately trying to battle body odor, smoke, and livestock. The first thing you notice about medieval fragrance is that it's not really fragrance, it's more like self-defense. Against smells, against other people's smells, against the overwhelming assault of life without plumbing that creeps into every nook, cranny, and garment of the Middle Ages. Perfume isn't so much an accessory as it is a survival mechanism. You quickly learn that scented oils and fancy perfumes are luxuries reserved for the wealthy and the excessively optimistic. For everyone else, yes, including you now, the common deodorizing strategy is to shove little bundles of herbs into your clothing and pray for the best. And when we say herbs, we're not talking delicate, refined blends like modern perfume notes. We were talking clumps of lavender, rosemary, thyme, dried rose petals, marjoram, sage, and whatever else someone found growing in the garden, forest, or suspiciously close to the latrine. Your first fragrance lesson begins when a noblewoman pulls you aside and hands you a small cloth pouch tied with a ribbon. For the smell, she says. You assume she means your smell, because everyone in the Middle Ages smells like a combination of smoke, sweat, wool, and existential dread. You sniff the pouch. It is strong pleasant, but strong enough to probably ward off insects and minor demons. She tucks it into the neckline of your gown with surprising force, patting you on the shoulder like she has just blessed you with the medieval equivalent of deodorant. The scent wafts upward immediately, filling your nostrils with floral intensity. If modern perfumes flirt softly with the senses, medieval perfumes grab you by the face and yell springtime with enthusiastic aggression. But sachets aren't the only method. Soon after, they try scented oils, usually homemade, because nothing says luxury like olive oil that's been sitting with rose petals in the sun for 14 days. They dab it on your wrists and behind your ears. It smells sweet at first, but within minutes your skin absorbs it, leaving behind a sticky sheen that makes you feel like a nicely seasoned roast. Lovely, someone says. Glossy, another adds. You feel like a ham. Meanwhile, the reason these fragrances even exist becomes painfully obvious. Medieval life smells. Everywhere. All the time. The castle halls are smoky from fireplaces and torches. The streets smell faintly or aggressively of horses. The kitchen smells like stew that has been simmering since last Tuesday. Even the fabrics you wear carry permanent scents of wood smoke and whatever animal the wool used to belong to. So yes, herbs are necessary, crucial, life-saving. You're introduced to the concept of strewing herbs, bundles of aromatic plants scattered across floors to freshen the air and mask unwanted odours. People literally walk on herbs all day, crushing them underfoot like nature's Febreze. When you stroll across a hallway covered in lavender and mint, the scent rises around you like a medieval aromatherapy session. It is strangely soothing and significantly better than the alternative smell lurking underneath. Another noblewoman proudly shows you a collection of pomanders, small metal balls filled with herbs, resins, spices, and occasionally things so bitter they could erase your sinuses. She carries one everywhere, holding it to her nose any time a questionable scent approaches, which, in this era, is constantly. At one point, someone ties a fresh sprig of rosemary into your hair. For fragrance, they say. You realise you're being used as a human bouquet, a walking herb rack, a medieval Yankee candle. But the wildest part? It kind of works. As the day goes on, your herb sachet warms against your skin and releases gentle floral scents. The rosemary in your hair gives off a clean, piney freshness every time you move. The oil on your wrists radiates sweetness, masking the smoky undertones your clothing has adopted since your arrival. People passing by smile. They inhale deeply. You smell delightful, they say, which is medieval for you don't smell like despair. And the truth is, in the Middle Ages, that is high praise. By evening you understand the system. You don't wear fragrance to impress. You wear fragrance to survive. You wear it to wage war on barnyard smells, sweat, medieval hygiene routines, and the general stench of daily life before running water. But as you settle into bed, your sachet placed on the pillow beside you like a loyal, fragrant companion, you realize something. For all its chaos, Medieval perfuming has one gentler purpose too, to make life just a little sweeter, a little softer, and a little more bearable, one crunchy lavender pouch at a time. You are wrapped in layers of wool, linen, and laces that require engineering skills to navigate. The first thing you realize about medieval clothing is that nothing, absolutely nothing, is intuitive. There are no zippers, no elastic, no convenient buttons that snap together with satisfying clicks. Instead, you are handed a stack of fabrics that looks like someone robbed a fabric merchant, spun in a circle 7 times, and dumped the contents into your arms. A servant cheerfully tells you, "This is your gown," as if the pile doesn't weigh as much as a mid-sized dog. Layer 1. The shift. A long, simple linen dress that touches your ankles and fits about as elegantly as a sleep sack. It's comfortable, at least, though you quickly learn it doubles as your pajamas, your undergarment, your sweat absorber, and your laundry crisis negotiator. It is the unsung hero of medieval fashion, the thing preventing your outer garments from absorbing your entire life story. Layer 2. The kirtle. This part is fitted, very fitted, so fitted that 2 extremely determined women must pull the laces at your sides while you brace yourself against a wooden post like you are preparing for impact. The fabric is sturdy wool, slightly scratchy, vaguely warm, and aggressively committed to shaping your torso into a medieval ideal that would cause modern chiropractors to weep. You try to inhale? The kirtle says no. Layer 3. The overdress. This one is decorative, rich colours, embroidered edges, long sleeves so wide they could collect half the dinner table. It is gorgeous, yes, but it swishes behind you like a cape made for someone far more coordinated. The sleeves alone threaten to drag through candle flames, trip passing servants, or scoop up small woodland creatures if you're not paying attention. Then come the accessories. A belt made of leather or embroidered cloth is wrapped around your waist, purely to remind you that breathing is optional. A girdle, basically a medieval charm bracelet worn around the hips, hangs with little metal tokens that clink every time you move, announcing your presence like a travelling wind chime. And then the shoes, stiff leather things with the arched support of a tortilla. Finally, they drape a cloak over your shoulders. It is heavy, warm, dramatic, the kind of garment that makes you look mysterious and dignified, right up until you try to turn around and accidentally whip someone with your hem. Cloaks look incredible in art, but in person, they behave like large, temperamental pets. Once fully dressed, you feel majestic, overwhelmed, sweaty, unbalanced, like royalty, but royalty who might trip at any moment. As you shuffle into the Great Hall, you notice everyone else is similarly wrapped in fabric-based chaos. Women glide elegantly in gowns that seem designed to sabotage their movement. Men wear tunics, leggings, hoods, and occasionally hats so tall they could interrupt passing cloud formations. Everything is fitted, layered, laced, or tied. Nobody seems to know where their outfit begins or ends. And yet they all act like it's completely normal. During dinner, your sleeves attempt to dive into your stew. A noblewoman gently rescues you, folding your sleeve back as if handling a fussy toddler. "You will learn," she assures you. You nod, though you're not convinced. You're just trying not to accidentally catapult mashed turnips across the table. Later, you attempt stairs, medieval stairs, narrow, steep, uneven stairs built by someone who clearly hated footwear. Your cloak wraps around one ankle, the hem of your skirt catches under your heel, and you clutch the wall like a tourist climbing a mountain. By the time you reach the top, you're sweating through 3 layers and re-evaluating your life choices. Still, the beauty of medieval clothing grows on you. The fabrics are rich and tactile, the colours are earthy and warm. The layers, once oppressive, start to feel cocoon-like, protective against cold winds and prying eyes. The gowns transform you into someone elegant, someone dignified, someone who looks like they own land and opinions that cannot be questioned. As you settle near a fire later that night, wrapped in wool and linen, and the faint panic of having almost set yourself ablaze 3 times, you realize something. Medieval fashion isn't about comfort. It's about symbolism, status, survival. It's about wearing your identity literally layer by heavy, confusing layer, and honestly, you look fabulous. Terrified, but fabulous. You slip into pointy medieval shoes that make your toes question every decision that led you here. The moment your foot enters the first shoe, you realize something has gone terribly, irrevocably wrong. The leather feels stiff, like someone tanned it using anger instead of traditional methods. The inside is smooth but unyielding. And the shape? Long, narrow, pointed, not fashionably pointed, not sleek and elegant. We are talking weaponized pointiness, the kind that seems designed to defend your shins during a tavern brawl. A servant beams proudly. They're very fashionable, she says. You wiggle your toes. They don't move. You try to stand. Your foot bends in ways no modern orthopedist would approve of. Medieval shoes, especially the fashionable poulaines, come in 2 categories. Functional enough to walk without crying. Status symbols that destroy your arches but boost your social ranking. Guess which one you've been given. As you take your first tentative steps, the long pointed tips of your shoes drag slightly on the floor. A noblewoman assures you this is normal. The longer the toe, the nobler the wearer, she says. That explains a lot. People here aren't trying to walk, they're trying to announce they didn't do manual labour. Your shoes announce it so loudly your feet might file complaints. Walking becomes a slow, cautious negotiation with physics. You must pick up each foot just enough so the tip doesn't smack into the ground, but not so high that you look like a duck doing a high kick. The technique is delicate, graceful, mildly humiliating. Then you attempt stairs. Modern shoes let you step confidently. Medieval shoes, oh no. To go upstairs, you have to angle your entire foot sideways like a confused crab because the toes simply want to bend. Going downstairs is even worse. One slip and your long shoe tips might catapult you into the Middle Ages version of a viral fail video minus cameras plus broken bones. As you shuffle around the manor, you notice everyone else moving like this, 2 slow, measured steps. Never too fast, always carefully placed. A choreographed dance of discomfort. You're starting to suspect that medieval fashion was invented by someone who wanted everyone to be late to everything all the time. And then you see the extreme shoes. Some men's poulaines are so long the tips have to be tied to their knees with little ribbons to keep them from flopping around like sad leather noodles. You stare, wide-eyed, as one nobleman strides past you, each step accompanied by a gentle bounce of his shoe tips. You want to laugh. You want to help him. You want to ask how he hasn't tripped into the fireplace yet. He notices your confusion and says proudly, "It shows status." Yes, the status of someone who never needs to flee danger. Meanwhile, your own shoes are breaking you in, not the other way round. The leather creaks. Your ankles wobble. Your toes whisper ominous threats. But despite the misery, the shoes do look impressive, sharp, elegant. Very I belong in a medieval illustration holding a falcon. When you walk down the hall, your steps make soft, authoritative clicks. People glance your way, recognizing your shoes as markers of someone fashionable, someone noble, someone deeply committed to style over survival. Later, when you finally slip them off to give your feet a moment of mercy, you examine the workmanship. They were hand-stitched, carefully shaped, crafted from high-quality leather. You appreciate the artistry right up until you remember your toes still feel like they've been folded into origami. That night, as you rub your aching feet and wonder if medieval podiatrists existed, spoiler, did not. You finally understand the truth. Medieval shoes were designed for comfort. They were designed for symbolism, for rank, for elegance, for the declaration, I do not need to run. And you You look incredible. You walk like a baby deer learning gravity, but incredible. Heavy necklaces, jeweled veils, and elaborate headpieces turn your daily stroll into a strength training session. The introduction happens abruptly. A noblewoman sweeps into your chamber carrying what appears to be a small treasure chest. She opens it slowly, dramatically, and you half expect golden light to burst out like you've stumbled into a fantasy video game. Instead, you're greeted by an array of jewellery so heavy it could double as blacksmith equipment. "Time to dress properly," she says, selecting a necklace the size of a small chandelier. You brace yourself. Medieval jewellery isn't a delicate, it isn't a light, it isn't subtle. It is wealth on a chain. It is social status rendered in metal, gems, and the faint crunch of your spine compressing under the weight. The necklace hooks around your neck with all the gentleness of a medieval curse. It's heavy, so heavy. It sits across your collarbones like an anchor forged from gold, garnets, and regret. "Lovely," the nobleman beams. You smile, or try to. The necklace pulls your chin downward just enough to give you a permanent contemplative look, like you are solving philosophical riddles against your will. Next comes the veil. Not a soft, simple veil, but a jeweled veil, weighted with little silver ornaments and stitched with beads that shimmer beautifully and dig lightly into your skull. When they place it over your hair, it tugs the entire hairstyle backward, forcing your head into perfect posture whether you want it or not. "Beautiful posture," someone says. You nod, though you're not entirely sure you could lower your head if you tried. Then they present the headpiece. It's large. It's ornate. It looks like someone melted 3 candlesticks together and added gemstones for flavour. You swear you hear medieval choir music as they lower it onto your head. The pressure is immediate. Your scalp, freshly abused from hair plucking and herbal rinses, begins sending urgent telegrams to your pain receptors. You now feel like a medieval pageant float. Walking becomes an Olympic event. With every step, the jewellery shifts slightly. The necklace sways like a pendulum. The veil jingles softly. The headpiece doesn't move at all because it is fused spiritually with your skull. You suddenly understand why medieval noblewomen walked slowly, gracefully, and with the poise of someone balancing a stack of plates. They literally had no choice. As you make your way down the hallway, a servant behind you whispers encouragement. "You are doing wonderfully." Another murmurs, "She walks like a lady of the court." You are flattered, but mostly you're terrified of leaning too far in any direction and becoming a human Jenga collapse. When you arrive in the Great Hall, you realise the jewellery isn't just fashion, it's armour. Every noblewoman glitters under candlelight. Their accessories broadcasting wealth, rank and family lineage. Some wear brooches shaped like animals. Some display gemstones the size of quail eggs. And one lady has earrings so large she must turn her whole torso to look at someone. You try to sit. This is a mistake. Jewellery shifts, chains clink. The headpiece tilts dangerously, threatening to topple forward and drag your entire hairdo with it. A maid rushes over to readjust everything, giving you a concerned frown reserved for unstable architecture. Dinner becomes a lesson in restraint. You can lean over your bowl of stew unless you want your necklace to dunk itself like it's tasting for poison. You can turn your head too fast, or your earrings will perform a surprise attack on your cheeks. You can laugh too heartily because the headpiece might interpret joy as rebellion. And yet, you look magnificent. The candlelight reflects off every polished surface. People glance at you with admiration and respect born from knowing you are currently carrying about 5 pounds of metal across your upper body. Through the discomfort, you begin to appreciate the craftsmanship. Each piece is hand-hammered, threaded, carved, or set by artisans who spent hours creating something meant to be worn for moments like this. These aren't decorations, they're declarations. By nightfall, when the jewellery is finally removed one piece at a time, you feel both lighter and strangely vulnerable. Your neck floats. Your head feels too high. Your collarbones whisper their thanks. Laying down without the weight feels like drifting. And as your eyes close, you realize medieval beauty isn't only about looking elegant, it's about enduring it. One heavy, spectacular piece at a time. You learn that medieval beauty included speaking gently, moving gracefully, and basically never interrupting anyone. It becomes clear the moment you open your mouth to say something normal, something modern like, "Hi, what time is dinner?" The entire room freezes. Not dramatically, not rudely, just with mild alarm like a flock of startled deer. A noblewoman places a delicate hand on your arm and whispers, "Softly, dear, softly." Another quietly adds, "A gentle voice preserves a gentle spirit." You inhale, you exhale, you swallow the 100 questions rattling in your skull. Welcome to medieval femininity. Here, beauty isn't just about appearance, it's about demeanor, dignity, quiet. A serene presence that suggests you are too elegant to raise your voice above a gentle murmur. The medieval ideal woman is calm, composed, soft-spoken. Essentially, she's a walking screensaver. Meanwhile, you with your modern habit of speaking at a normal volume and expressing opinions are basically an untrained falcon flapping around the hall. Your lessons begin immediately. First, they teach you the proper tone. It is barely above a whisper. It is soft, airy, the vocal equivalent of a feather landing on a pillow. You try it. You sound like someone auditioning to be a ghost. The noblewomen nod approvingly. "Much better," they say. You wonder if they can actually hear you, or if polite nodding is simply the default response. Then comes posture. You must glide, not walk. You must stand with your hands folded demurely. You must move as though your bones are made of poetry, and your joints whisper blessings when they bend. The goal is elegance, not efficiency. Every action should look like it was painted by a medieval artist who found the concept of urgency personally offensive. Your first attempt at the medieval glide is less glide and more slow motion shuffle. Your skirt swishes beautifully, but you also almost trip over the hem, accidentally slap a maid with your sleeve, and bump into a decorative pillar that was not prepared for your energy. Slow, steady the noblewomen coach, circling you like gentle, judgment-free sharks. A lady moves with intention. You are trying. You really are. But moving at this pace makes you feel like a Windows computer, trying to run too many programs. Gracefulness is hard when you're wearing 3 layers, a heavy belt, and shoes shaped like medieval punctuation marks. Next comes the skill of polite silence, something medieval society treats like an Olympic sport. At dinner, you're expected to listen more than speak, laugh softly, nod thoughtfully, tilt your head at a perfect angle, speak only when addressed. You spend most of the meal feeling like you're trapped in an 800-year-old job interview. But silence has its purpose. In the medieval worldview, quietness conveys refinement, modesty, and most importantly, self-control. Loudness, on the other hand, signals impulsiveness or impropriety. So every time you resist the urge to gasp at a surprising detail in a story, or hold back a laugh that threatens to burst out of you, you earn invisible medieval beauty points. Not that silence is easy. At one point, a noblewoman tells you an absolutely wild story about a chicken that laid an egg shaped like a saint's face. Your strength is tested, your lips twitch, your eyes water, but you master the art of the soft, polite smile, which the medieval world considers the peak of feminine expression. Later in the courtyard, you are encouraged to practice graceful listening, which it turns out is just listening, but while looking like you are contemplating a celestial prophecy, head slightly bowed, brows delicate. Yours now are, hands folded neatly, a serene expression that says, "I am present, but not burdensome." You feel vaguely like a decorative statue, but slowly, shockingly, you start to get it. The silence wraps around you like a soft cloak. It forces you to be still, to observe, to listen to the rhythm of the castle. Footsteps, murmurs, distant animals, crackling fireplaces, the rustle of heavy gowns. The world feels slower, calmer, more deliberate, and though it clashes hilariously with your modern instincts, there is something oddly soothing about being expected to sit quietly and simply be. No small talk, no over-explaining, no anxiety-fueled rambling, just stillness. Of course, there are drawbacks. You nearly choke holding back a sneeze because sneezes aren't graceful. You tend to ask questions quickly, so mysteries linger far longer than they should. And at one point, someone mistakes your silence for shyness and offers you chamomile tea as emotional support. But by evening, as you glide, almost successfully through the hallway, your movements soft and your voice gentle, you realize something unexpected. Silence, this strange, strict medieval silence, has become part of the beauty ritual, an inner stillness that complements the outer effort. And though you will absolutely break the silence the second you return to your own century, for now, you are quiet, you're poised, you're elegant. Against all odds, you have mastered the art of looking beautiful by barely making a sound. You discover that even the way you sit is judged. You learn this the hard way by attempting to sit like a normal human with normal knees. You bend, you lower yourself. You prepare for the sweet relief of resting your feet, and instantly 3 noblewomen gasp like you've attempted to wrestle a goose indoors. One places a hand over her heart. Another whispers, "Bless her." A third gently lifts your elbow and says with tremendous sympathy, "We'll try that again." Apparently, sitting in the Middle Ages is not a casual act. It is a performance, a carefully orchestrated aesthetic commitment, a whole identity condensed into the angle of your spine. The rules begin, lovingly, mercilessly. Do not plop. Sitting must be controlled, delicate and reverent like descending onto a throne, even if it is just a wooden bench that smells like a century of discomfort. Do not spread anything, arms, legs, or existential despair. Your knees must remain together at all times, as if held in place by divine intervention or very polite glue. Your hands must be arranged. One rests lightly in the other, folded like a decorative napkin. No dangling, no fidgeting, and absolutely no scratching. Medieval elegance forbids scratching. Your back must be straight, not good posture straight, not yoga class straight. You must sit like someone who has never slouched in their life and never will, even upon death. You try again. This time, you lower yourself slowly, hands poised, gaze soft, shoulders relaxed. Your skirt pulls around you like a compliant pet. You land on the bench with only a whisper of sound, not a creak, not a thump, not a squeak from your tortured shoes. The noblewomen sigh with relief, like they've just watched a baby deer learn to walk. But wait, there's more. Apparently, where you sit matters too. Women of status sit near the center of attention, visible, graceful, surrounded by fabrics and social expectations. You're placed on a cushioned bench that feels firm enough to be a medieval moral lesson. Cushions, by the way, are filled with wool, feathers, or straw, so you're never entirely sure whether a lump beneath you is a feather cluster or a life lesson in humility. As you sit, you're instructed to tilt your head slightly, not too much, lest you seem coquettish, not too little, lest you seem cold. Your expression should be serene, thoughtful, mildly pleasant, like you were listening to a bedtime story you're too polite to fall asleep to. Then comes the feet situation. Your feet must stay neatly side by side, toes pointed forward, ankles gently crossed if you're feeling extra elegant. You're not allowed to stick your legs out, stretch them, or hunch over to rub them, even though your pointy shoes have begun their silent rebellion against your bones. During dinner, Sitting becomes even more dramatic. You must stay upright while politely reaching for food, not lunging, not leaning, not using your elbows like a forklift. Your sleeves threaten to dip into the soup. Your jewelry shifts ominously. Your back screams. Your knees tremble. Your face must remain calm. People glance over and nod approvingly. "She sits beautifully," someone murmurs. You consider that your modern self would absolutely be sitting cross-legged by now, eating snacks off a coffee table and watching television. Instead, you are perched like a moral example. By midday, you are sat on benches, stools, and high-backed chairs decorated with carvings of saints and mythical animals. All of them share the same qualities: rigid, uncomfortable, and 0% ergonomic. At one point, you attempt to subtly stretch your spine. It cracks so loudly that two people turn around, startled. You smile gently to compensate. They accept this. Yet in this strange world of curated posture and rigid elegance, something surprising happens. As you sit straight, still quiet, you feel a kind of calm, a slowing down, a sense of being present. The world is quieter from this posture. You notice the flicker of candles, the rustle of fabric, the soft murmur of conversation, the warmth of the fire, the gentle rhythm of everyday medieval life playing out around you. The act of sitting becomes a meditation. Not comfortable, not easy, but intentional. You start to understand why posture mattered so much. It communicated self-control, dignity, and beauty in a world that was unpredictable, loud, chaotic, and occasionally on fire. By evening, when you finally rise from the bench and stretch your stiff limbs, your joints crack like a medieval musical instrument. But you stand taller, you move slower, you carry a new awareness of yourself, and as ridiculous as the rules are, you realize the art of sitting pretty is just another way medieval people carved a sense of grace into lives that were anything but graceful. So you take a deep breath, straighten your back, and glide onward. Your getting ready routine takes 2 hours, 7 prayers, 4 herbs, and a tolerance for discomfort you never knew you possessed. You wake up at dawn not because you want to, but because the sun has slammed through your tiny window like an unpaid debt collector. There is no snooze button, no blackout curtains, no gentle phone alarm that plays nature sounds while you pretend to be serene. No. Morning in the Middle Ages arrives with the subtlety of a marching band. The first sound you hear is a rooster screaming its existential truth to the heavens. The second sound is a servant gently knocking to inform you that it is time. You don't know what it is time means yet, but the tone suggests that resistance is futile. Your morning routine begins before you've even fully remembered your name. A wooden basin of cold water is placed on a table. Not cool, not refreshing. Cold. The kind of cold that reminds you medieval heating is theoretical. You splash your face because everyone else does, though your soul begs for mercy. This apparently counts as cleansing. Then comes the first prayer of the day because medieval mornings are spiritual marathons. A noblewoman guides you through a soft recitation thanking God for waking up alive, and you absolutely mean every word because life expectancy back then was a dice game. Next, the herbal face wash. This is routine in the medieval sense, which means someone mixes rosewater, vinegar, and herbs so fresh they still have opinions. A servant dabs it onto your face with a linen cloth. It tingles, it burns, it smells nice. You're never sure if it's helping your skin or preparing it for battle. Your eyebrows, those brave survivors of medieval plucking, are inspected. A woman leans in with tweezers that look like they were forged near a battlefield. She plucks a single hair, you flinch. Another prayer is spoken. Then the forehead. They smooth it with a mixture they call a balm, though its consistency says salad dressing. Your already too high medieval forehead is admired again, as if you personally sculpted it using the power of will and tweezers. Next comes hair care. which is a full chapter of suffering. You sit down. A servant pours a rinse of lavender and rosemary through your hair while you inhale deeply and pretend it is soothing instead of freezing. They comb your hair with the enthusiasm of someone trying to extract secrets from your scalp. Then they braid, twist, pin, coil, and wrap until your head feels like a fortified structure. Another prayer is whispered to keep your hairstyle intact. You add a silent one of your own. Now it's time for makeup. The white lead paint returns. You stare at the pot like it's an old enemy. They dab it across your cheeks, forehead, chin, and nose with gentle taps that make you wonder how many generations were lost to this cosmetic decision. Then comes the rouge berries, beet juice, or whatever medieval alchemy they've conjured today. The flush is subtle but effective. You now appear awake, alive, and only mildly poisoned. At this point, you've been getting ready for approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes. Then the dressing begins. First the shift, then the kirtle, then the overdress, then the belt, then the sleeves that are wide enough to smuggle a small child, then the veil, then the headpiece. By the time the final knot is tied, you feel like a well-dressed onion with 17 layers. Another prayer is whispered for protection from stains, drafts, and wardrobe malfunctions. Finally, jewelry. A necklace that weighs approximately the same as a newborn goat is placed around your neck. A girdle is draped across your waist. Rings are added. You begin to list sideways under the weight of elegance, and a maid discreetly nudges you upright again. Your morning routine concludes with breakfast, a piece of bread so dense it could anchor a fishing boat, and one final prayer, because frankly you need it. You are now clean-ish. Dressed, painted, perfumed, and emotionally transformed. You look breathtaking. You feel exhausted. Your day hasn't even started yet. But as you glide out into the courtyard, wrapped in herbs, wool, prayers, and 10 pounds of jewellery, you realise something profound. You survived the medieval morning routine. That alone makes you beautiful. Bathing is rare, slightly chaotic, and requires heating water with actual fire. You hear whispers about a bath being prepared for you, and at first you're thrilled. A bath. A real bath. Visions of warm, steamy comfort float into your mind, maybe even a moment of peace, after days of medieval beauty rituals that range from mildly concerning to pleased on to tell Osha. But then reality arrives in the form of 3 servants struggling to drag a large wooden tub into your room. It is deep, round, and looks like something that once stored pickles. The servants set it down with a thud, wipe their brows, and immediately begin discussing firewood. That's when you remember, in the Middle Ages, hot water isn't a commodity, it's a quest. They leave the room to prepare the water, and you hear what can only be described as a medieval construction site happening downstairs. Buckets sloshing, metal clanging, people shouting instructions, fire being poked with a concerning level of confidence. The entire house seems to be participating in your bath, like it's a community event. Eventually, they return with the first bucket of hot water. They pour it into your tub. Steam rises. It looks glorious. Then they bring the second bucket, and the third, and the fourth. After bucket 6, you realize someone must be sprinting between the fireplace and your room like a medieval marathoner. After bucket 10, you begin to understand why people in the Middle Ages bathed so rarely. This process is insane. Finally, the tub is filled. Sort of. The water reaches your knees if you sit at a very specific angle while holding your breath. Close enough. They add herbs because if you were bathing only a few times a year, you might as well smell vaguely like a forest. Lavender, chamomile, mint, and one plant you suspect was chosen purely because it looked pretty. The surface of the water resembles a soup garnish. You undress behind a curtain while praying the room isn't cold. It is. It absolutely is. The stone walls trap cold like a medieval refrigerator. You lower a toe into the water, hot, lovely, and breathe out a sigh of bliss. Then you immerse yourself, and suddenly you're floating in herbal broth, a medieval human tea bag. The warmth is heavenly. The herbs smell wonderful. You relax for the first time in days, and then a servant taps the door and asks politely if you'd like the scrubbing cloth. You do not. But medieval etiquette leaves no room for declining hygiene. The scrubbing cloth appears. It is rough, very rough, possibly woven from gilt and tree bark. The servant demonstrates how to use it, briskly, firmly, with enthusiasm. You try it gently on your arm. It feels like exfoliating with a pocket full of seashells. Now cleanish and lightly scratched, you are offered soap if you can call it that. Medieval soap is a mixture of rendered fat, ashes, and whatever else someone thought might leather if bullied hard enough. It smells like soap adjacent. You try it. It works, sort of. You emerge smelling better but also faintly smoky, like a freshly disinfected campground. Meanwhile, the bath water begins cooling. Fast. You consider getting out, but the air is freezing, and the water is less freezing. You begin negotiating with yourself like you're stuck between two bad job offers. Eventually, a servant brings more hot water, and you bless her silently. When you finally step out, you're wrapped in linen rough but warm. Your skin steams. Your hair drips. You feel lighter, soothed, renewed, and then you see the bathtub. It looks like the aftermath of a botanical explosion. Herbs everywhere, soap residue swirling. The water now a murky soup of dust, dirt, and existential regret. Servants carry it away, bucket by bucket, and you realise this is why medieval people bathed so rarely. It's a full-scale operation, a logistical miracle, a minor festival requiring manpower, wood, water, and stamina. Yet as you sit by the fire afterward, wrapped snugly, feeling human again, you recognise something important. A medieval bath is not just hygiene. It is ceremony. It is effort. It is luxury. It is community teamwork. It is, against all odds, beautiful. You will not do it again for a very long time, but for now, you are clean. You are warm. You're impossibly proud. Braids, veils, ribbons, buns. Your scalp becomes a medieval art project held together by hope and pins. The moment you sit down, you know something big is about to happen. A servant places a small wooden stool behind you. Another brings a basket overflowing with ribbons, combs, pins, and mysterious metal tools that look like they were borrowed from a blacksmith. A third woman rolls up her sleeves like she is preparing for open-heart surgery. "Let's make you beautiful," she says. You want to ask, in what way are we measuring beauty today? Comfort, creativity, survival? But your fate is already sealed. The first part is simple, brushing. Except simple is generous. Medieval brushes are stiff, bristly, slightly unforgiving contraptions that drag through your hair like they're trying to uncover buried secrets. You wince. A noblewoman pats your shoulder. Pain is temporary. Beauty is eternal. You consider disagreeing but decide to save your energy. Once your hair is reasonably tamed, the sculpting begins. They divide your hair into sections, many sections each pulled, twisted and braided with the intensity of people weaving a ship's rigging. Some braids frame your face, others wrap around your head like decorative vines. One long braid is coiled into a bun so tight you could bounce a coin off it. Then come the ribbons, so many ribbons. They weave them into your braids, tie them into bows, loop them around the bun, and add a few extra just in case anyone doubts your commitment to medieval aesthetics. Each ribbon is brightly coloured, embroidered, or embellished with tiny beads that chime faintly when you move. You sound like a festive wind chime. Next, they introduce the pins. Pins, pins and more pins. Long ones, short ones, curved ones, decorative ones, every size imaginable. Some are functional, some are purely decorative. You are fairly certain one is actually a small weapon disguised as a hair accessory. They slide them into your hairstyle with surgical precision, each one tightening the structure. Soon your hair isn't just styled, it is reinforced. You've essentially become a medieval suspension bridge held up by metal and faith. Then the veil. Medieval veils are soft, sheer, and beautiful, but also wildly impractical. A servant drapes it carefully over your architectural masterpiece of a hairstyle, adjusting it so that it cascades elegantly without hiding all the hard work underneath. They pin it at the temples, they pin it at the back, they pin it at the sides. By the time they were done, the veil is so secure that an entire armed rebellion could not remove it. Finally, they place the finishing touch, a circlet or decorative band. It sits just above your forehead, your newly expanded, high-status medieval forehead, glittering softly in the candlelight. When they step back, everyone gasps. "Perfect," one woman whispers, like a saint in a manuscript. Another adds, "You must sit very still, very, very still." And that's when you realize the truth. Your hairstyle is not meant for movement, or wind, or living. It's meant for portraits, for tapestries, for looking beautiful in stillness. Because the second you tilt your head too far, one braid shifts ominously. A pin digs into your scalp. The veil protests. The entire structure trembles like a medieval Jenga tower. But when you sit perfectly upright, hands folded, spine straight, you genuinely look ethereal. Like someone who has never known hardship. Like someone who exists purely for artistic appreciation. Like someone whose hair is a moral lesson about patience. Walking is another challenge entirely. Your hairstyle wobbles slightly with each step, but the pins hold firm. You feel every movement, every sway, every vibration. You start walking slower, more carefully, until you discover the secret. Medieval hairstyles shape not just how you look, but how you move. You glide because gliding is the only speed your hair will allow. Throughout the day, people compliment your braids, ribbons, and veils. They marvel at the craftsmanship. They ask which lady-in-waiting braided the bun, who pinned the veil, what pattern your ribbons follow. You nod graciously, careful not to tilt your head more than 3 degrees. By the time evening arrives and they begin taking everything down, your scalp feels like it has lived 3 separate lifetimes. Pins clatter onto the table, more pins than you ever realized were up there. Your braids unravel. Your hair finally exhales. You swear it expands like a freed woodland creature. Yet as your head finally relaxes onto your pillow, you realize something strange and wonderful. For all its impracticality, your hairstyle made you feel like part of medieval art, like someone painted in rich colors and gold leaf whose beauty was crafted with care, precision, and admittedly, mild suffering. And honestly, you'd do it again, maybe with fewer pins. At court, everyone stares at your pale face and high forehead, like you're a fashionable ghost. You arrive in the great hall feeling like a medieval Fabergé egg, fragile, over-decorated, and entirely too aware that one wrong movement could unravel half your beauty routine. The hall itself is grand. Banners draped across stone walls, torches crackling dramatically, floors polished just enough to suggest someone wiped them with a slightly cleaner rag this morning. People mingle in clusters, whispering secrets, trading glances, and trying very hard not to step on each other as long hems. As you enter, the crowd parts slightly, like you're a Moses, and the sea is made of people wearing pointy shoes. They stare not rudely, not aggressively, but with a collective curiosity that says, "Ah, yes, a person who fully committed to today's beauty expectations." Your pale, lead-enhanced complexion reflects the torchlight in a way that could guide ships. Your plucked-back hairline gleams like a newly polished marble archway. Your ribbons flutter. Your veil glows. You look otherworldly. A nobleman walks past, glances at you, and mutters, "Radiant," in the same tone someone might use to describe a well-constructed cathedral. A noblewoman gives an approving nod, as if your forehead alone has passed some unspoken exam. You half expect someone to reach out and test its height with a measuring string. Moving through the court feels like being a celebrity in a world where the paparazzi are everyone, and the camera is simply their eyes. You can practically feel the evaluations happening in real time. Is her complexion pale enough? Are her braids sufficiently intricate? Does her forehead reflect divine light or just regular light? Has her jewellery crushed her collarbones yet? You keep your posture perfect, and your movements measured. Every step feels like it has been choreographed by someone who deeply respects gravity and deeply fears tripping. Then the king and queen enter. Instantly, conversation drops to a reverent murmur. You follow the crowd and bow deeply, or as deeply as your jewellery allows. The Queen-S beauty is startling, not because she looks natural, but because she looks curated. Everything about her appearance screams, "Yes, I spent 3 hours being prepared like a holy statue." And now you understand, beauty here isn't mere vanity. It is armor. It is strategy. It is your resume, your status badge, your silent introduction before you say a single, breathy, soft-spoken word. A courtier approaches you. He studies your appearance thoughtfully, then compliments your devotion to refinement. That is medieval for, "Thank you for suffering through your morning routine like the rest of us." He asks where you are from. Before you can answer, he notices the faint shimmer of saffron in your hair and nods approvingly. "A lover of the golden hue," he says. This is apparently a personality trait. Nearby, a group of noblewomen discuss recipes for face paint. "I added crushed lily root to mine," one boasts. "It makes the skin smoother." Another proudly declares she avoided the sun all summer in honor of perfect paleness. You stand there, nodding politely, while thinking about how your 21st century dermatologist would weep. Then someone introduces you to a visiting noble. He greets you warmly, then immediately compliments the height of your forehead. You manage a serene smile. You do not mention the tweezers. He asks if you enjoy poetry. You respond softly, very softly, because loud enthusiasm would be social suicide. He looks delighted by your gentle spirit. You swallow a laugh. As the court moves into dining, your beauty serves you again. People defer to you. They make space for you. They ask your opinion on gowns, veils, embroidery, and the appropriate shade of rouge. You're treated as someone important not because of who you are, but because you look like someone who could be featured in a manuscript illustration leaning elegantly on a windowsill. And all the while, your beauty routine works like psychological armor. You're a confident, poised, a shimmering ghost of nobility. Even when your feet ache, even when your jewelry weighs as much as your emotional baggage, even when your scalp is screaming under the veil, court is a visual battlefield, and today you showed up equipped. By the time you leave the hall gliding, glowing, and exhausted, you realize something profound. In the medieval world, beauty is not just presentation, it is currency, power, protection. The difference between being overlooked and being welcomed, between being ignored and being included. And though the standards are strange, uncomfortable, and occasionally poisonous, tonight you wore your beauty like armor, and it worked. You attempt to eat stew with dignity, even though it smells like a potion and looks like solidified fear. You take your seat at the long wooden dining table upright, graceful, serene, because by now you've learned that medieval elegance depends heavily on pretending everything is fine, even when everything is absolutely not fine. A servant places a wooden bowl in front of you. Steam rises. It smells complicated, like herbs, meat, root vegetables, and uncertainty. The texture? Thick enough to patch a hole in the castle roof. This is stew. Medieval stew. A noblewoman across from you beams proudly. A family recipe, she says. You nod as though that phrase doesn't immediately make your instincts scream. You lift your wooden spoon, heavy, clunky, and carved by someone who clearly disliked symmetry, and attempt to stir the contents. The stew barely moves. It shifts reluctantly, like it is considering whether to cooperate. A soft plop emerges from the depths, which can only be described as the sound of something surrendering. The first challenge, scooping it. The second challenge, bringing it to your mouth without flinging droplets onto your gown, veil, or the innocent bystander sitting next to you. You manage the delicate dance, guiding the spoon upward as though balancing a sacred relic. Everyone around you watches with polite interest. No pressure. You taste it. It is surprisingly okay, earthy, warm, deeply suspicious but not bad. Then your teeth meet something mysterious. A chunk, a chewy texture, a piece of vegetable, a piece of something else. You keep your face serene as your mind panics at high speed. This, you remind yourself, is where elegance becomes survival. You take another bite, slower this time. The noblewomen nod approvingly. You eat so gracefully, one whispers. You imagine telling her that in your century you usually eat tacos over the sink, but somehow restrain yourself. Halfway through the bowl, a small bone appears. You discreetly remove it with medieval-level finesse, meaning you hide it in your napkin and pray no one saw. A nobleman mentions that today's stew includes the good parts of the chicken, which should comfort you but doesn't he. Then comes the bread. By bread, you imagine a soft roll, a fluffy loaf, something warm and comforting. What you get instead is a dense brick of grain so heavy you could defend yourself with it. Medieval bread was made with coarse flour, sometimes containing bits of ground stone from the mill. Yes, stone. You're now technically eating gravel. You tear a piece off and dip it into your stew, which softens it just enough that you don't chip a tooth. The room fills with conversation, gentle, melodic, refined. You listen politely while trying to chew quietly. In the Middle Ages, eating loudly is considered barbaric. Unfortunately, the bread requires jaw strength, normally reserved for competitive sports, and every bite feels like your molars are negotiating a trade deal. As the meal continues, servants bring additional dishes, maybe a roasted fowl, a small pie containing ingredients no one will specify, or boiled vegetables that have transcended flavor. You take polite bites of everything, nodding appreciatively like a diplomat. Then someone brings out wine. You nearly cry with joy. Except medieval wine is different. Unfiltered, cloudy, slightly sour. You sip it delicately because gulping is unladylike and decide it tastes like courage. You drink a little more. Suddenly the stew seems less threatening. Throughout the dinner, you maintain perfect medieval etiquette. Back straight, hands dainty, chews small, face neutral. Even when the stew gurgles ominously. Even when your bread fights back. Even when a noblewoman tells you how last week's stew contained a very fine pigeon, you survive. Elegantly, miraculously. And then, blessed moment, the servants clear the table. Relief washes over you like warm bath water. You place your spoon down gently, maintaining the last shred of dignity in a world determined to challenge your digestive confidence. As you rise from your seat, carefully because your jewelry shifts like tectonic plates, you realize something astonishing. You ate medieval stew with grace. You kept your composure. You honored the ritual. You protected your gown. And you resisted every instinct to scream, "What is in this?" And that truly is beauty in the medieval world. Looking elegant while silently negotiating peace with food that absolutely wants to start a fight. Between cold nights, loud animals, and the occasional plague rumour, you sleep terribly, yet you're still expected to look angelic at sunrise. Your night begins innocently enough. You climb into your medieval bed, if we can call it that, with its straw mattress, wooden frame, and blankets woven from wool thick enough to exfoliate your skin if you shift too fast. You nestle in, adjusting your head on a pillow stuffed with feathers that poke out like they're trying to escape. It is not comfortable, but you've grown used to discomfort the same way a shipwreck grows used to living in a pantry. You close your eyes, you breathe deeply, you try to relax, then you hear it. The first animal noise of the night. A cow groaning in the courtyard, or maybe a donkey, or a rooster suffering from insomnia and screaming at random intervals. You try to ignore it. You tell yourself this is natural. You tell yourself people have been sleeping through barnyard chaos for centuries. Then a dog barks, long and loud, like it is determined to warn the entire kingdom about absolutely nothing. You roll over. The bed creaks a loud medieval creak, like the wood is announcing, someone is trying to sleep and I refuse to allow it. You pull the wool blanket over your head and breathe in the scent of lanolin and faintly damp sheep, just as you start drifting off voices, whispers, someone in the hallway discussing the possibility of plague returning to a neighbouring town. You lie awake immediately, staring at the ceiling like, well, that's relaxing news. You attempt sleep again. You try counting sheep. You try prayer number 4 of the evening. You try not thinking about the fact that the only thing standing between you and an outdoor winter draft is a wooden shutter and optimism. You finally drift into a shallow, uneasy sleep. Then, thud, something hits the roof. Is it a cat, a bird, a demon doing parkour? You will never know. You fall asleep again. Then someone bangs a pot in the kitchen. At dawn, by the way, happens aggressively early. There is no gentle sunrise, no morning playlist, just light blasting through your window like God flipped a switch. A servant enters quietly, because apparently medieval etiquette requires waking you softly, even while you want to scream. "Good morning," she says. "It is time to prepare for the day." You sit up slowly, feeling like a medieval corpse brought back to life through sheer obligation. Your reflection, if you're lucky enough to glimpse one in a polished metal mirror, reveals the truth. You slept terribly. Your hair is rebellious. Your under-eye circles are darker than the castle dungeon. Your skin is dry from cold air and emotional trauma, and yet you are expected to look divine. So, the transformation begins. Step 1. Cold water splash. The shock wakes you up faster than caffeine. It tightens your skin, reduces puffiness, and strips away your will to complain. Medieval people consider this refreshing. You consider it a hate crime. Step 2. Herbal remedies. A servant brings lavender for calm, rosemary for clarity, and rosewater to make you smell like someone who slept. You dab your face gently, hoping the herbs can erase the memory of last night's cow symphony. Step 3. Lead makeup. Pale skin hides all sins, including exhaustion. The makeup goes on. You begin to resemble a ghost in peak condition. Step 4. Hair restructuring. Your bedhead is tamed with oil, pins, and prayer. They rebraid, rewrap, and reglide your hair until it no longer hints at the 3 hours you spent awake listening to medieval wildlife failing at quietness. Step 5. Posture. You straighten your spine, lift your chin, breathe slowly. Pretend you're well rested. Medieval beauty is 30 grooming, 70 acting. By the time the sun is fully up, you look ethereal, soft, serene, a walking portrait of divine calm. But inside, you're running on fumes, herbs, and stubbornness. Still, no one notices. Everyone else is also tired. Everyone else also slept through livestock drama and plague gossip. Everyone is pretending together. You glide into the hall for breakfast, floating like a holy figure in a manuscript. Someone compliments your radiance. You thank them politely, resisting the urge to say, "I woke up 17 times, and at one point I genuinely thought the roof was haunted." And that's the magic of medieval beauty. It's not just about face paint or hairstyles. It's about convincing yourself and everyone else that you're a serene, elegant being even when you haven't slept since the Crusades. You're exhausted. You're magnificent. You're medieval. Any time you step outside, the sun threatens your pale complexion and the wind threatens your hairstyle. The moment you open the heavy wooden door and step into the fresh medieval air, you instantly regret everything. The sun, bright, bold, entirely too enthusiastic, greets you like an overbearing relative. Its warm beams hit your face, and you panic because every medieval beauty rulebook you accidentally absorbed in the last few days is screaming the same thing: Don'ty tan. A tan in this era is social doom. A tan means you work outside. A tan means you toil. A tan means you are not upper class. And after spending hours plucking, scrubbing, whitening, braiding, pinning, and praying your way into nobility-level beauty, the last thing you want is to lose all your status because the sun decided to personally attack you. You pull your veil lower over your forehead. You shield your face with your sleeve. You angle your head like you are practicing a medieval swan impression. You walk in the shadow of a wall that is 3 inches wide, but you commit anyway. But the sun is relentless, and so is the wind. Because the second you think you've found safety, bam! A gust of wind slaps you across the face like nature just realized you were trying too hard. Your veil whips dramatically, your ribbons flutter wildly, and for one horrifying moment you feel your carefully constructed hairstyle shift. The braids tremble, the pins quiver, the entire architectural masterpiece threatens collapse. You freeze. A servant freezes with you. She whispers, "Stay very still, my lady." You obey. You do not breathe. You do not blink. You silently pray to at least 6 saints. When the wind dies down, you both exhale in relief. The kind of relief usually reserved for near-death experiences or narrowly avoided awkward conversations. You attempt to walk again, gliding delicately. But the outdoors has decided that today is chaos. Dust kicks up from the road and immediately heads for your face like it's magnetized. Your lead-based makeup does its best to cling on, but even it seems to be second-guessing your life choices. The scent of livestock drifts toward you on another breeze. You try to breathe elegantly light, shallow, ladylike breaths, but the air smells like farmland, ambition, and manure. Your face must remain serene. You cannot grimace. Medieval elegance demands stoicism in the face of barnyard reality. Then someone suggests a lovely stroll in the garden. You want to decline. You absolutely should decline. Your instincts scream that a garden is just the outdoors wearing a prettier dress. But refusing would be rude, so off you go. Immediately, the sun attacks again. You angle your veil. You hide behind a taller noblewoman like she is a portable shade tree. You pretend you're simply admiring the architecture of the castle wall while secretly hugging its shadow for dear life. The noblewomen around you chat about poetry, embroidery, and which herbs are best for lightening hair. Meanwhile, you're silently calculating the UV exposure level and deciding which saint to pray to for forehead protection. Then the wind returns stronger this time. Your veil flies upward like it wants to greet God directly. Your ribbons whip around like festive but dangerous whips. Your hair shifts again, threatening full mutiny. One braid lifts slightly, and your entire soul leaves your body. A lady beside you, hair pinned and immovable like a fortified tower, calmly places a hand on your arm. "Ah, yes," she says, "the breeze." So flattering, yet so cruel. You nod gravely, because this is the truest statement you've ever heard in this century. By the time you make it back indoors, you are emotionally drained. You check your reflection in a polished metal plate, bracing for disaster. Shockingly, you still look good. Not perfect, not portrait ready, but good. Your veil survived. Your braids mostly held. Your forehead remains blessedly pale. And that's when you realize something important. outdoor beauty in the medieval world isn't about perfection. It is about perseverance. It is about battling nature with ribbons and determination. It is about embracing the wind as an enemy you must tolerate. It is about walking outside, returning inside, and thinking, I survived, and I did not tan. You may have fought the sun. You may have wrestled the wind. You may have tasted dust. But you are still elegant. You discover that beauty plays a major role in finding a partner. You realize this the moment you enter the Great Hall one evening and notice the shift in atmosphere. People aren't just mingling, they're evaluating, appraising, strategizing. Every glance feels like it's part of a secret auction where no one announces the bids, but everyone is silently participating. Because in the medieval world, love isn't just love. Courtship isn't a just romance. It is economics. It is negotiation. It is a market where beauty is the most valuable form of currency you possess. You haven't even taken your seat before someone nudges you and whispers, Sir Geoffrey is looking for a wife. This is said the same way people in your century talk about limited edition sneakers or houses in good school districts. You glance around and notice several young nobles performing a sort of elegant peacocking, showing off their posture, their best fabrics, their least suspicious facial angles. The women do it too, gliding like swans, showing off their pale complexions and high foreheads with the same quiet pride someone today shows when they've finally mastered their skincare routine. Then it dawns on you. You're being watched. Not in a creepy way, not in an intimidating way, in an evaluative way, as if your forehead alone is being scored on a scale from adequate to blessed by angels. A nobleman approaches you. He bows politely, studies your face, and smiles. Your complexion is most luminous, he says. That is his opening line. Not hello, not how are you enjoying the feast, not even a fun fact about his family or hobbies. No, he starts with your paleness. Because in this era, beauty isn't small talk. Beauty is the talk. He asks where you are from. He asks about your family name. He asks how many gowns you own, as if that is an indicator of your personality. You answer gracefully, using your softest, most court-approved voice. He nods approvingly, as if your volume is another box ticked on the compatibility chart. Then he compliments your hair, not the colour, not the texture, but the braids, because elaborate braids mean you have access to people who can braid them, which to him means status, wealth, household stability. You realise your hairstyle is essentially the medieval equivalent of flashing a premium credit card. A group of noblewomen nearby are discussing the same topic. One sighs dramatically because a young lord has noticed her embroidered sleeves. Another whispers eagerly that she heard someone say the Duke admires modesty above all else. A third discreetly pats her veil to ensure her forehead is still visible, because heaven forbid someone mistake her for a person of average skull height. Everywhere you look, beauty is working as social currency. It determines who speaks to you, who notices you, who might propose to you, who believes you are worthy of admiration. And every compliment is double-sided. Your skin is so fair really means you look wealthy. Your hair is so well done really means you have skilled servants. You move elegantly really means you'd look great standing silently in my castle. One man, older and wearing a beard that appears to have absorbed 3 generations of soup, approaches you with a hopeful smile. He looks you up and down, lingering just a touch too long on your jewellery. Fine craftsmanship, he says. Your family must be quite comfortable. You politely step away before you find yourself betrothed by accident. A younger noble joins you next. He's handsome in that medieval way, meaning he has most of his teeth, and his linen shirt is clean today. He compliments your eyes, not your paleness, not your forehead, your obsters. You nearly swoon from the shock of hearing something a normal human might say. But even this fleeting hint of genuine charm comes with a catch. He's eyeing you the way someone eyes a particularly nice horse. You can practically see the mental list forming: polite, attractive, youthful, possibly fertile good posture, high social potential. In this world, romance is mostly paperwork disguised as poetry. As the evening continues, more nobles attempt conversation, some subtle, some bold, some terrible. One man asks how many siblings you have, another asks if you can embroider. A third stares so intensely at your forehead you briefly wonder if he's trying to see the future in it. And yet beneath all the awkwardness, the bargaining, the expectations, something soft lingers. People here genuinely believe beauty connects to inner virtues. That grace hints at kindness. That elegance reflects a gentle heart. That a serene presence reveals noble character. Is it outdated? Yes. Exhausting? Absolutely. Romantic? In a bizarre, old-fashioned way, kinda. By the end of the night, you're overwhelmed. You've been assessed more thoroughly than a medieval tax ledger. You retreat to your chamber, wondering how anyone falls in love in a world where your forehead gets more attention than your personality. But as you sit by the candlelight, unwinding your ribbons and pins, you begin to see the thread running through it all. Beauty here is not shallow. It is symbolic. It is survival. It is language. It is hope stitched into fabric and pinned into hair. In the medieval world, beauty isn't just how you look. It is the story you tell before you ever speak. And tonight, whether you meant to or not, you told a good one. A slight fever turns your pale complexion from angelic to help me. Medieval beauty routines do not have a plan for this. It begins subtly: an ache behind your eyes, a heaviness in your limbs, a warmth in your cheeks that would be flattering if it didn't feel like you were slowly roasting from the inside out. At first, you were in denial. You tell yourself it's just fatigue from the 13-hour beauty routine, the 4-hour sleep night, or the emotional toll of pretending stew was delicious. But by mid-morning, the truth hits you like a poorly aimed jousting lance. You're getting sick. And in the medieval world, getting sick is not acute inconvenience. It's a dramatic, all-hands-on-deck crisis. Your pale complexion, which yesterday served as a beacon of elegance, now looks blotchy and uneven. Your carefully applied lead-based foundation is struggling heroically, refusing to admit defeat as it tries to cling to skin that has turned damp with fever. Your rosy cheeks, normally the result of crushed berries, now glow with the internal furnace of genuine illness. If yesterday you looked like an ethereal saint in a manuscript, today you look like that same saint after losing a duel. You stagger to your mirror, which is not really a mirror but a slightly polished piece of metal that distorts your reflection into abstract art. Even so, you can see the problem clearly. Your aesthetic is slipping. Your forehead still looks impressive, but now it's shiny. Not wholly shiny, sweaty shiny. And the worst part: beauty standards here do not include looking like you've been microwaved. A maid enters, gasps dramatically, and rushes to your side. "My lady, you're flushed," she cries. This is the medieval equivalent of hearing a car alarm. Everyone within 50 feet is alerted and immediately panics. Another maid runs in with a cup of something herbal. A third arrives holding a small cloth. A fourth is already whispering that she heard of a fever in a nearby village and that this might be a sign. None of this helps. You're ushered into a chair, wrapped in a blanket, dabbed with rose water, forced to sip what tastes like liquefied disappointment, and asked repeatedly how you feel. You try to answer, but your voice croaks like a medieval frog. The maids exchange glances that say, "Oh no, she is unwell and therefore unfashionable." Because here is the brutal truth. In this era, illness isn't just unpleasant, it's socially inconvenient. Your beauty is supposed to communicate purity, virtue, and divine favour. Illness communicates the opposite. They attempt to salvage your aesthetic. First, they pat your face with cool cloths, trying to restore that porcelain complexion. Unfortunately, your fevered skin rejects their efforts, turning pinker and sweatier with every pat. You now glisten, and not in the glamorous, ethereal way, more in the has just run a marathon in a wool dress way. Next, they try makeup. Bold choice. The white paint goes on, but it immediately rebels, forming streaks and patches as moisture seeps through. The rouge melts into an uneven blotch that makes you look less like an elegant noblewoman and more like someone who has been slapped repeatedly by destiny. A woman tries to fix your hair, but your scalp is too sensitive, and your carefully pinned braids begin to droop from the heat of your head. A single ribbon slips free and hangs sadly over your shoulder like a limp party streamer. You are rapidly transforming into a Renaissance painting of person who is not doing well. Word spreads, because of course it does. Medieval castles are basically gossip factories with drafty windows. Within an hour, half the household has heard that you are sick. By lunchtime, the entire castle knows. By mid-afternoon, someone is probably making exaggerated predictions about whether you will survive to see winter. A well-meaning noblewoman visits your chamber. She peers at your flushed face, your wilted hairstyle, your sweaty forehead, and says the most medievally devastating sentence imaginable. Oh dear. You look very human. You want to throw yourself out the window. Instead, you are given more herbs, more rosewater, more questionable drinks, more prayers, and slowly, as the day drags on, you realize the deep, unflattering truth. Medieval beauty is fragile. It crumbles under fever. It melts under sweat. It falters under illness in ways modern mascara never will. There is no contouring your way out of a medieval cold. There is no concealer powerful enough to combat plague rumours. There's no hairstyle stable enough to defeat fever heat. But strangely, something comforting happens. People soften around you. They speak more gently. They bring broth, blankets, warm words. Your beauty may have fallen apart, but your humanity rises to the surface raw, unglamorous, real. And those around you? They respond not with judgment, but with care. You're still pale, in patches. You're still elegant, in spirit. You just slightly boiled. And even though your aesthetic has collapsed like a poorly built medieval bridge, you remember something important. Absolutely no one looks angelic with a fever, not even in the Middle Ages. And that's okay. Finally, you learn that aging was not exactly celebrated. You quietly appreciate your modern retinol creams and health insurance in a way you never have before. You first notice it during a quiet afternoon in the Great Hall. You are sipping what might generously be called medieval tea, really just hot water, that briefly met a mint leaf in passing when an older noblewoman walks in. She is dignified, poised, wearing a veil that frames her face like a soft halo. Her steps are careful, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of decades spent navigating slippery castle floors and unpredictable livestock. You smile at her warmly. The courtiers do not. They barely glance her way. They bow politely, yes, but their eyes flick right past her, as if her presence is a courtesy, not an event. No whispering, no admiration, no sharp inhale at the sight of a perfectly pinned braid. It's like she is blending into the medieval wallpaper, a tapestry, elegant but overlooked. And that is when the truth hits you like a runaway ox cart. In this world, youth is beauty, and beauty is status. And aging, unfortunately, is treated like an optional feature no one bothered to enable. You watch her calmly take her seat near the hearth, hands folded, face serene. She looks wise. She looks gentle. She looks like she could tell every person in this castle exactly what they're doing wrong and how to fix it. Yet the younger nobles don't notice her unless she speaks, and when she does, they treat her like a wise artifact. Is it respect? Yes. Is it admiration? Not exactly. You try to imagine aging in the Middle Ages, joints stiffening in the cold, hair thinning from years of elaborate styling, skin weathered because SPF doesn't exist yet. Teeth, well, let's not even talk about teeth. Meanwhile, beauty standards are telling you to stay pale, stay smooth, stay youthful, stay quiet. You think about your modern world serums, sunscreen, dentists, heating systems, soft sheets, adjustable mattresses, supplements, moisturizers that cost more than medieval livestock. You think about your yearly health checkups and how you once complained about waiting 50 minutes in a climate-controlled room. You feel suddenly deeply humbled. Because in this era, if you managed to live long enough to see grey hair, that was impressive. That was victory. That was survival on expert mode. The older noblewoman catches your eye at one point and gives you a tiny, knowing smile. It's the smile of someone who has endured 100 winters, 20 scandals, 10 bad marriages in the family tree, and countless mornings where the stew tasted suspicious. She looks like she has seen entire generations obsess over foreheads and pale skin, and eventually learned not to care. And then, because the universe loves irony, a young noblewoman sits beside her and complains about getting a fine line near her eye. A fine line. Just one. You watch the older woman-esque expression remain perfectly polite, while her soul leaves her body for a brief moment. Beauty routines continue around them. Powders, plucking, perfumes, ribbons, flattering angles. But the older woman simply sits there, warmed by the fire, unconcerned with whether the wind might ruin her braids or whether the sun will darken her skin. She has transcended the beauty battlefield. You begin to envy her, not because she has ignored no, because she is free. Free from eyebrow plucking, free from forehead plucking, free from rouge that melts off if you sneeze too enthusiastically, free from worrying about whether your hair architecture will collapse in a light breeze, free from the heavy, unspoken pressure of being beautiful simply to be taken seriously. She has lived long enough that her value is no longer tied to appearance, but to experience, wisdom, story, survival. And in a world where illness, childbirth, infection, weather and accidents lurk around every corner, surviving is the most beautiful thing of all. You sit with that for a moment, this quiet realization that aging is a privilege, no matter the century, that laugh lines are proof you laughed, that grey hair means you endured, that wrinkles mean you existed long enough to earn them. You glance once more at the older noblewoman. She meets your eyes again, and you swear her expression says, let them chase pale skin. Let them pluck their foreheads. Let them worry. I'm still here. And suddenly, you want to hug your modern dermatologist. Because for all the chaos of the medieval world, for all the unrealistic standards and questionable skincare products, aging is the one beauty truth that transcends every era. It is not failure, it is not loss, it is triumph, and you will never complain about your night cream again.